Aloha and welcome to the Savvy Luminary, an astrology podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, a brand astrologer, designer, and spiritual business owner who has helped hundreds of businesses and nonprofits go from stuck to unstoppable. I am here to inspire you to make confident and focused moves that shine the light on your business through astrological insight, brand strategy, and interviews with other spiritual business leaders. I believe you are here to share your magic and shine brightly like the luminary you are meant to be. Okay, let's dig into this week's episode. Hey everyone, Leslie Tagorda, your brand astrologer and designer here today to go over two powerful cycles that are coming to a close. And oh my gosh, am I relieved, right? So today we're going to be talking about the full moon in Virgo and Mercury ending its first retrograde cycle. And what these cycles mean, they're super deeply intertwined. And it really is showing us how we are showing up in our brands or maybe how we're not. And I want to talk about really how sometimes things go our way and sometimes when they don't go our way, what we can do about it instead of just like calling it quits. All right. So in today's episode, we'll be honestly looking at gratitude, forgiveness, and letting go, and how this Virgo full moon and Mercury station direct will support us. So all the things that we're going to be talking about today, what is a full moon, what specifically the Virgo full supermoon is, kind of looking at this Virgo Pisces polarity, the meaning of it. We'll also be looking over the Mercury retrograde lessons and letting it all go with the cleansing full moon rituals that we can forgive and release our expectations. It sounds like a lot, but I'm going to try to cover this pretty quickly because we don't want to dwell on all of this heaviness, really. Okay. So before we get started, I wanted to shout out to an Apple Podcast listener that left this amazing review about our new little podcast, The Savvy Luminary. This is a review from Mind Money Balance. And they say, Leslie guides you through the stars in a way that is approachable, fun, and clarifying. So many entrepreneurs are caught up on the next best strategy. You need a funnel, a Facebook group, an evergreen webinar. And what the Savvy Luminary does is quiet all that noise so you can focus on what works best for your ideal clients. Not using yet another ideal client avatar, but using your brand's chart to dig into the psychographics of your ideal client. What are their wants, needs, desires, roadblocks, and challenges that you are uniquely positioned to solve? Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I love this review from Mind Money Balance. And so I have these amazing gifts to give to you. If you leave a review on Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, I will select one review a week and I will send you a Savvy Luminary goodie bag. And these goodie bags are filled with stickers and pens and all kinds of other office and ritual goodies. And so if you leave a review, I will select one, read your review on this podcast, and mail you one of these amazing goodie bags. You can take a look at a photo of them on thesavvyluminary.com so you can grab yours. And if you have a business bestie, might I please ask you to share this podcast with them? And if they're so inclined, tell them to leave a review and mention you in their review, and I will send both of you one of these fun prizes. I'm going to select a winner each week. So let's get into this Virgo full moon. So on Monday, March 9th, the moon will be hitting its exact fullness in the sign of Virgo at 10:48 p.m. Pacific or 7:48 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, so let's take a look at what exactly a full moon is. Obviously, you know what a full moon is, but astrologically speaking, a full moon is when the moon and the sun are exactly opposite each other. So we know that the moon doesn't have its own source of light, and so it's reflecting that of the sun. And so when we look at the moon and the sun during a full moon, they will always be in opposite signs of the zodiac. And so these opposite signs are paired together. They're called polar opposites and they belong together. So this full moon is going to be in Virgo. It's going to be reflecting the light of Pisces. And we'll get to that. Now, during the full moons, you already know that your emotions run high, the tides run high. Everything that the moon represents about our internal, emotive, emotional self that is represented by the water element, all of that is coming up. All of that, you're feeling it so much more intensely. And this particular full moon that happens on March 9th, on Monday, is also called a super moon. What a supermoon is what happens when the moon is closest to the earth in its monthly orbit. So astronomers will talk about if it's in its the 10th percent of its closest orbit to the earth, and that would qualify as a supermoon. And so this year in 2020, supermoons happen 3 times this year, and when a supermoon happens, it appears to be brighter and larger in the sky. So you can imagine that if the moon is a super full moon, a super moon, and it's closer to the earth, you can expect your emotions to be running at a even deeper, even fuller expression. And so this expression of the Virgo Pisces polarity is going to be at the fore for this entire week. Now, the full moon is also the ending of a cycle. Okay. The full moon, if we think about the lunar cycle, and I love thinking about lunar cycles because, the new moon 2 weeks ago that happened. The new moon is a time where we plant our seeds of intention, right? If we're thinking about the process of growing things, which, of course, as I mentioned before, our businesses are essentially a garden. The full moon is a time where we harvest. It's a time where we can celebrate all of our wins. And sometimes our harvest is not what we expected. And so, what do we do with that? How do we acknowledge that and release and forgive the things that didn't go our way? So, later on in this episode, I will definitely be talking about a full moon ritual and what to do. And so, think about the full moon as the completion of a cycle. And this cycle started in September 2019 when we had a new moon in Virgo. So think about like the macro lunar cycle as it had a new moon in Virgo 6 months ago, and now we have the full moon in Virgo. And so we can look back at the things that we planted 6 months ago and come to completion of where we are today. So I'll talk more about that when we go into our full moon ritual about what to do with those learning lessons. It happens to also be the ending of a cycle for Mercury Retrograde, our first retrograde season of 2020. And oh my goodness, right? It's been an intense one. I've heard you guys, I felt it myself. And so we have these 2 cycles of completion coming to a close. So, also on the same day as the Virgo full moon, Mercury will be putting on the brakes from going in reverse, stopping to go forward. Thank goodness. And so we're going to be talking about what these 2 cycles, how they are working together, and what this means for us when we create a full moon ritual for forgiveness and release. Before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the full supermoon in Virgo. astrologically speaking, it is a beautiful chart that happens at exactly that moment that the moon is opposite the sun. If you want to take a look at the chart, head over to thesavvyluminary.com and you can check out the show notes where I'll have the chart up for the full moon. So at the time the moon is opposite of the sun will be in close conjunction with Neptune, who is also the ruler of Pisces. So the Pisces sun will be 1 degree, so super, super close to the ruler, Neptune. So more than just having this compassionate sun, it's going to feel extra extra Pisces. Talked a little bit about Pisces during the new moon episode, the new moon in Pisces. Pisces is very compassionate. They are the sages of the zodiac. They want to bring ease and flow. And that's what we've been really learning how to do over the last few weeks, is how to bring more ease and flow into our business so that we don't overload. And probably if you're anything like me, we haven't really been taking our medicine and we've been still pushing and pushing and pushing and working. And so I've been feeling a little bit burned out. I notice I haven't been showing up as much, but lesson learned. The chart of the full supermoon in Virgo is really earth focused. You'll be able to see if you look at the chart, moon is making these beautiful flowing connections. In astrology, we call them trines. The moon is trining Venus, which is in Taurus, and Venus happens to also be 1 degree away from Uranus. So the archetype of making connections and creating beauty is in 1 degree from the archetype that wants to shake things up. So our emotions will probably be running high in these areas of connecting with others. So looking at your partnerships, looking at your relationships, that energy, even though it's in a trine, you might be feeling like you want to shake up and like not necessarily break up, but feeling more free in your relationships. And so this can be relationships in your personal life. It can be relationships in your business life, your partnerships, with vendors or with like your best clients, your dream clients. The Virgo moon will also be making a harmonious flow, a harmonious aspect, a trine to the Capricorn pilot that we still have with Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. You know that Saturn and Pluto, we've been talking about this, they were in exact conjunction at the same degree back in January. They are spreading apart because, Saturn moves faster than Pluto, but Jupiter is also catching up to Pluto. And so we have 4 planets in Capricorn right now. We have Saturn, we have Pluto, we have Jupiter, we also have Mars coming up. And the Virgo moon, which Virgo is an earth sign, is making a trine to all of those Capricorn energies. So what this is saying is that we really feel the support right now, the emotional support, because we're talking about the Virgo full moon. We're feeling the emotional support and drive to really create that sustainability. Sustainability is going to be a theme for the entire year. And this Virgo full moon should be helping you feel like you can actually get this done. And I'm going to be talking about how this is working for me in my life right now. So why don't I just tell you about this story? So this week has been really, really an intense week for me. I had an amazing session with a business financial advisor and friend, Kelly Gushu. She runs an organization called Personal Finance Warrior, and she helps high achieving women get more specific and more clarity in their, not only their current money plans, but building for sustainability and legacy in the future. And she's been helping me get really clear on the money that I need to bring in this business to support my lifestyle. Because what I've been doing, what I've noticed, what she helped me see over this past week, was that I've been so focusing on visibility and the big picture that I was really losing track of sustainability. And even though sustainability has been on my mind, I haven't been really practicing it. And so I needed a little bit of help. And so even though Kelly and I were looking at some pretty big numbers on my finance spreadsheet of what I want to bring in, what I'm currently bringing in, and all of the investments, I didn't really feel like I could have, like, my friend Kelly was like really helping me and supporting me and saying, these numbers aren't so scary. And I actually didn't feel that these giant numbers were that scary. I felt really relieved that I saw these really big numbers. And even though this was a really big mountain, that an achievement that I was trying to create, that I was trying to like go after, I felt really empowered. I felt really hopeful and optimistic that these numbers were things that I could actually achieve, even though they were such big numbers. So when we're looking at this idea with the full moon in Virgo, with the moon being in Virgo, trining all of that Capricorn pileup, that made total sense to me, that I didn't feel destitute, that I didn't feel that I was at the bottom of this pit. Instead, I felt like with just a little bit of hard work and efficiency and organization and a redirecting of my priorities, I was going to be able to accomplish this feat. So let's talk a little bit about Virgo. You might be a Virgo if you have a Virgo sun, or if you have a Virgo moon, or if you have a Virgo rising. These themes are going to be, you're like, yeah, I know all about this already. We all have Virgo in our charts, of course, but what this Virgo full moon is asking us, it's asking us to look at how have we been working efficiently? How have we been organized? How have we been a service to others? How have we been whole in our business? Like, how has our business been sustainable and healthy? Where have we been like pushing and pushing and pushing with our need to be perfect? And where have we been worrying too much? And so, even if you don't have strong Virgo, these themes are coming up right now. So, Virgo is one of two signs that are ruled by Mercury. The other sign is Gemini. So, where Mercury is our ability to process and collect information and express ourselves, in Gemini, it's all about getting as much information as possible. And in Virgo, it's about processing and analyzing and organizing all of this information so that we can be more efficient. So, do you see the connection between this ending of Mercury retrograde happening with this ending of a lunar cycle, the Virgo full moon, ruled by Mercury, and how these are all supporting each other? So I don't know about you, but I am super stoked that Mercury retrograde is ending on March 9th. Yes, I mean, it has been a long 3 weeks. I have heard you, I have seen you, I have felt it myself. How was it for you? I actually just got off a call and my client was like, when is Mercury retrograde ending? Well, so it puts on the brakes on Monday, and yes, it's going to finally start going direct. Now, we are still going to be in a shadow period, meaning that Mercury has to retrace its steps to where it was when it started. And so we're really still looking at Mercury being in this watery Pisces until April 10th. Okay, things are moving forward. You're going to feel the lessening of the confusion and everything, your technical things. Like, I even heard of somebody, she was saying that her toilet got backed up and like her toilet wasn't working, and I was like, oh, so are you having trouble of letting go of things? And we were laughing because there was so much symbolism in all of this, right? So while we still have a little retracing and backtracking to do know that as of Monday at 11:49 p.m. Eastern and 8:49 p.m. Pacific, Mercury will put on the brakes and start moving forward again, right? So I'm curious, what have you learned during this time? Did you really start making space to let go? And the Mercury retrogrades, just like this time last year when Mercury was in retrograde, and it was also retrograde in Pisces in last year in 2019, and retrograde again in Pisces, mostly in Pisces except for this last few degrees in Aquarius during this retrograde season. But for me, it felt way more intense. And I believe that it felt way more intense this year, even though they were both in Pisces, just because of all of the things going on with Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter in Capricorn. Like I've been talking about, this is going to be the theme for the year and how we build sustainability in all parts of our business, right? And so for all of us, it's going to feel a little bit heavier. So, what did you end up cleaning up in your business this time, this first Mercury retrograde? How did you bring in some ease and flow? What were some of the wins and the expectations that, came through, like as you're sitting in traffic, as your computer crashed? Like, really, if this is a time to be emotionally honest with ourselves, it was not easy for me. It was emotionally very difficult. I felt really tired. I really honestly felt like I didn't want to show up. And honestly, looking back as to like when Mercury retrograde happened, it was right after this podcast launch. Like up until now, most of this podcast has been recorded during a Mercury retrograde. And online and socially, I'm so glad that I had the help that I needed and systems already set up, because honestly, I have not been feeling like showing up. Like I haven't felt like going live in my group. I haven't felt like being there. But when you have a business, you still have to show up, you still have to commit, right? So, how do we manage that energy? So, gratefully, we have this full moon in Virgo. Talked about the full moon, I've talked about what Virgo means, about our service to others. And so now we get to clear the slate. It is so perfect that we have a full moon supporting this Mercury retrograde ending so we can release and let go. All right, it's finally time for a full moon ritual. Yes, if you need some reviewing about moon rituals, head to my episode 5 about the new moon in Pisces. I talked about what moon rituals were for and how to create one for yourself. And so it's basically the same steps. Now, the difference between the full moon and the new moon is that the new moon is the beginning of a cycle where we intend to plant seeds. And the full moon, when we do a full moon ritual, while we're still creating intentions, our intentions are no longer to create other intentions. Our intentions are to celebrate wins, to give us forgiveness, to forgive rather, whether it's ourselves or loved ones, and to let go of things that no longer serve us. Okay. Full moons are about release. We are at the end of a cycle. So, this full moon in Virgo, the cycle started way back in September, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, with our new moon in Virgo. And we talked about for the Virgo season, when it started in new moon, Virgo is about, in our business, it's about service to others. It's about creating efficiency. It's about creating organization. So, of course, as a as a new moon person, I of course had a ritual, and I looked back into my journal to see what I intended, to see what I might want to celebrate for this upcoming full moon. And so in my journal, I had intentions to reach more visionary women-owned businesses so that I could be of service to them, to let them know that there was a better way to brand, a better way to access their unique gifts, and better way to show up in the world using branding, but getting really specific and efficient using astrology. My intention that I set in September of 2019 was that I wanted to reach 10,000 followers on Instagram. So I could get those, those links so that I could even serve more people using my stories that, all these features that open up on Instagram when you reach that 10,000 followers. I wanted my message to reach farther and to help way more women establish their expertise and their brands in their own unique ways, right? So the 10,000, it was really functional for me. Of course, there was some vanity metrics that I, was hoping to attain by grabbing more followers. But really, I wanted the 10,000 followers so I could access those features on Instagram to reach even more people. So let's look at all of these things. What happened in those last 6 months? And really, let's really look at what didn't happen. Okay, so my intentions were to reach more visionary women owned businesses on Instagram. So if you look at my Instagram right now, I have about 1,800 followers. Did I make 10,000 followers? No, I did not. All right, wah wah for me. But I have to say that I did actually in the last month, I increased my followers on Instagram by I think about 300 or 400 people, which is pretty awesome because I haven't really been making any progress on Instagram except for in the last month. And I chalk it up to I got help with Instagram. My Instagram person has been doing an amazing job using my stories, using my podcast, and creating great captions. She's been teaching me so much. And in the last 6 months, I also even started this podcast. Even though that wasn't necessarily an intention that I had set during the new moon, look at the fruits of my intention about being a service to more people. And I can see how my message has gotten clearer about how women owned businesses need to expand their reach, not just purely for visibility, but so that they could share their vision, so that they can expand their reach. I feel like all of this is finally coming through together. And while I may not have reached my 10,000 goal yet, I know that I'm on my way. So I have a ton to be grateful for, a ton to celebrate. So this is what I want to show you is that oftentimes, we may not have reached our goal. Maybe we overreached. Maybe our timeline that we had intended for ourselves was, too short. I wasn't working with the timeline that nature set out for me. So what I want to do during this full moon ritual, and which I urge you to do, is to really look at what you have accomplished in the last 6 months. What are those wins that you must celebrate, right? These accomplishments and these wins, and when we acknowledge these wins, this is gratitude. And we've talked about this before, gratitude builds abundance. You know this, we all know this, but we need to practice this. We can't just think about this. We have to practice this. And so what better way than to create space, to create time, to create a ceremony or a ritual to acknowledge these wins. The steps are the same again as in the new moon rituals about clearing the space, calling in your spirit guide, getting into the flow, stating your intentions, and then stating your intentions this time is about celebrating your wins and then acknowledging all those wins, and then also about forgiveness. Forgiveness is so huge in gratitude, and I really need to take my own medicine with this because, the person who needs the forgiveness the most is myself. Most of the time, we will find that we are hardest on ourselves, harder on the people that are closest to us. These are the people that really need forgiveness. And the best way to start off with forgiveness is just to acknowledge it. Sometimes forgiveness and letting go, I understand, is easier said than done, but it does start with acknowledging and saying. Okay, so I want to forgive myself for not reaching that 10,000 goal, right? I want to forgive myself for creating an intention that was beyond my reach. But I also want to acknowledge my wins. Look, I created this podcast. Yes, I am serving more people. So these go hand in hand. And after the next thing, after you have the forgiveness, then you just have to release the expectations, release those inner obstacles. And sometimes all you can do at this moment is to acknowledge the obstacles, acknowledge self-doubt, acknowledge what you think were mistakes or learning opportunities, and thank them, right? Just like Marie Kondo, when you're getting rid of clutter, like we've been doing this Mercury retrograde about clearing space, you want to give thanks for the object and let go. So I urge you all to make some time on Monday to create a ceremony or a ritual so that you can celebrate your wins, forgive yourself or other people that you are placing blame upon, and to release all of those expectations, to release all of the things that you learned during this Mercury retrograde, right? All of those things that are not allowing you to be sustainable, not allowing you to bring ease and flow and focus into your business. Now, I'll have some notes on some questions that you might want to ask yourself, right? How to celebrate your successes around, if you want to like just work on Virgo things around your organization and efficiency and your service to others. Again, service to others, very important with this Virgo full moon. You'll have some cues in the show notes about how to forgive yourself and forgive others that you might be blaming for the things that didn't go your way, right? And what to really analyze and organize around what to let go and release. Let go of worry, let go of the need to be perfect, let go of these ideals of the goals that didn't go exactly your way or the way you planned them, right? Can you see how all of these are Virgo themes? And so if you need further help, some of the questions that you might want to ask yourself are there any fruits of your work that you need to celebrate and give thanks to? I know there are. And if you have to dig hard to find those things, because they are there and you have to acknowledge them. Who needs your forgiveness? Is it yourself? Any vendors? Any clients? Any partners? And what expectations need releasing? Okay, these are really, really big things that I want you to focus on the full moon, because it's going to really make you feel better. It's going to give you closure. It's going to give you closure not only for this moon cycle, this Virgo moon cycle, but it's also going to give you closure for the Mercury retrograde. So we don't really have any astrological highlights for entrepreneurs this week, because everything this week is about the full moon in Virgo and the ending of Mercury retrograde that I spent the entire episode talking about. So I would love it if you could help a girl out and let your business besties know about this amazing podcast. Share the wisdom, share the knowledge, share with them the Savvy Luminary. Follow me on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is New Moon Creative Co. That's my business. And then you could also join us on Facebook and my Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary, where I have almost daily cues about the astrology of the day. It's a great community where we're all supporting each other about how to show up and be the luminary that we are meant to be. Lastly, remember that there are prizes, so head over to Stitcher, or if you're an Apple Podcast user, head over to those podcast players and rate and review. I will be selecting one review a week to read here on the podcast and sending you a prize, those awesome goodie bags. The photos are up on thesavvyluminary.com. And I would love to hear your feedback or your questions on astrology, how you could show up bigger and brighter. Let me know. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to record next week's episode when I'm finally out of Mercury retrograde. Until then, take care. Mahalo for listening to this brand new podcast. If you enjoyed learning about astrology for entrepreneurs, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with your business besties, and hop over to the Savvy Luminary for links to episode notes and our free Facebook community where you can send me questions about astrology or branding, as well as connect with other like-minded businesses.